This video is best viewed on a full screen at 1080p quality. Click the gear at the lower right corner of the video window. Next, click the quality option. And finally, select 1080p. I'm projecting all of the images in a dimly lit room rather than a dark room. For this, I'm using two shaded lamps placed about 12 feet diagonally from the center of the screen, and each lamp has a small 15-watt chandelier bulb in it. The ambient light in the room measures 4 lumen at the center of the screen. So the two most important factors in your home theater are obviously the projector and the screen, and that's why I want to quickly mention the type of screen I'm projecting onto. In this case, it's a Spandex projector screen instead of the more typical blackout material. There are several advantages to this type of screen, one of which it can attach to a $30 backdrop stand. It's easy to do. You just take some 5 spring clips and you attach the screen to the backdrop stand. And this can be used outdoors in your backyard, or take it with you camping or to a party. And the screen I have here is made in the USA by Stretch Screen USA. It's available on Amazon for around $80, which is actually less than a do-it-yourself fixed frame type screen. You don't have to buy wood, corner brackets, staples, and actually build the frame as you do with that type of frame. The other advantage is that you don't need a permanent empty wall space. For example, the situation I have here is a little awkward to put up a fixed frame screen because I have a staircase in the way. But with the Spandex projector screen, that's not a problem. It literally only takes 30 seconds to put up this screen. Right here, we're all halfway done already. It just simply attaches to 5 small hooks that are in the ceiling, and you can barely see them. And the corner brackets, the bottom corners, attach with a bungee to something as simple as a water jug or whatever you want to use for that. And there you have it. The screen is completely up. So here you can see the Spandex projector screen produces a really good image, but that's only half the story. Check this out. If we pick up our camera and walk around behind the screen, you can see that the Spandex projector screen can also act as a backlight screen. That's like getting 2 screens in one. No other type of projector screen can do this. Now, buyer beware, you may be tempted to go with a cheaper knockoff version from China, but go with the one made in the USA. It's Amazon's choice, even at a higher price, and it has 147 reviews so far, where the cheap one only has 3 reviews, which can easily be faked. So here's the Amazon product page of the Spandex projector screen that I have, and they have images along the left. As you can see, it's a much cleaner design instead of sewn crooked and all that. And the fabric is a much higher quality. It's a tighter weave, which will give you better colors and a sharper image. And here is a real-world example of that. I have the 2 screens hung side by side, with the Made in the USA one on the left and the Chinese knockoff version on the right. And you can really see the difference in the color quality, the brightness, the saturation. And if you look at this next image here, you can actually see how much detail you lose in the smoke due to the looser weave of the cheaper fabric. Here's the product page one more time, and I put a link in the description to make it easy for you. Alright, let's get going. Compare our projectors. Here you can see the size comparison between the DBPower T20 budget projector with a claimed brightness of 1800 lumen and a resolution of 800 by 480, and the Aaxa M5 portable projector with a brightness of 900 lumen and a higher 1280 by 800 resolution. One thing to note is that the Aaxa M5 can also run on its internal battery for up to 70 minutes in eco mode, which lowers the brightness to 500 lumen. Our first comparison is a simple white image to compare the brightness. As you can see, the Aaxa M5 at half the lumen rating is much brighter than the DBPower T20. Next, let's zoom in to compare the pixels. Here we have some basic colored squares, and the Aaxa M5 is much brighter and has more accurate magenta colors. And this next slide you may want to pause on. This is the actual lumen measurement of each color. This was done in a completely dark room as opposed to a dimly lit room like all our other slides were shot in. And zooming in, we can compare the color pixels. Here we have a basic color gradient, and the Aaxa M5, the colors are brighter and stronger. And another color gradient here, a little more advanced one. The Aaxa M5 has a smoother transition between some of the colors. And here we have some colored smoke on a white background. The Aaxa M5, the higher resolution, maintains better details. And when we zoom in, we can compare the difference here. Here's the reverse with color smoke on a black background. The M5 maintains better highlight details. And zooming in, we can compare that more closely. Here we have a basic highlight shadow gradient, and the M5 has more defined steps, sharper transitions between each step. And zooming in, we can compare the quality here. Here we'll compare some shadow details. The M5 has an overall brighter image with more contrast. And zooming in, the higher resolution helps with the details as well. Here we'll compare the highlights. And the Aaxa M5 is brighter, and the higher resolution produces a sharper image. Here's another good image to compare shadow details. The Aaxa M5 is brighter overall with more contrast. And we can zoom in on this one to compare the details more closely. Here we'll compare the shadows and highlights in a single image, and the Aaxa M5 has better shadow details, as to be expected. And here we'll compare the resolution with some grid patterns. The Aaxa M5, the higher resolution, produces a more accurate grid pattern. And zooming in, we can see how some of the lines almost disappear from the cheaper DBPower T20 projector. Here's another grid pattern. Both projectors slightly enlarge and crop the image at the edges. And zooming in, we can see the much higher quality of the Aaxa M5 projector. Here we'll have some black grids on a white background. The M5 is much brighter and more contrast, higher resolution, producing more accurate grid patterns. And zooming in, we can see the difference here. And here's some white grids on a black background. The DBPower can't compete against the M5. The resolution's lower as well as the brightness. Zooming in, you can see the big difference here. Next, we'll compare the text quality. The higher resolution Aaxa M5 produces much better smaller text, and the DBPower gets blurrier the closer you get to the edge of it. That's due to the lower lens quality of the projector. Next, we'll compare some skin tones, and the Aaxa M5 has brighter faces with good skin tones, and we'll zoom in on this one to compare that more closely. Here's some more faces to compare the skin tones, and once again the Aaxa M5 beautifully sharp facial details, and when we zoom in we can see the individual pixels of the DBPower projector. Here we'll do a simple color comparison. The Aaxa M5 has much brighter colors, and when we zoom in we can see the details are better as well due to its higher resolution. Here's a similar image for color comparison. The Aaxa M5 once again has brighter colors with more detail. Here's a good lower contrast image, and we can see the Aaxa M5 produces a more well-balanced foggy image. And here we'll do a color comparison. The Aaxa M5 has more vibrant colors with crisper details. And this is a good night shot. The Aaxa M5 is crisp and bright, and we'll zoom in on the portion of the photo here to compare the details. Here's a good high contrast image. The Aaxa M5 has great reproduction of the high contrast low light image, and we can zoom in to compare the details a little bit more closely here. Here we'll compare the contrast, and the Aaxa M5 is much brighter, so it has better contrast. And zooming in, we can see it produces a smoother image as well. Here's a good low light image. The Aaxa M5 has fantastic colors and shadow details. And we'll zoom in to compare the resolution of the pyramid here. Here's a good sunset scene to compare. The Aaxa M5 is very bright with a lot of contrast. And a good night shot of a bridge. The Aaxa M5 maybe have a little bit too much brightening. The sky appears a little bit too blue for this night shot, but zooming in you can see the details of the bolts are much better from the Aaxa. Here's another good night scene. The Aaxa M5 has a great night scene reproduction, and we'll zoom in on the fence to compare the detail here. And here is a green train. The Aaxa M5, the higher resolution produces very crisp details. And when we zoom in on that, you can see the drastic difference here. Here's a balloon in a night sky, and the Aaxa M5 has a great image, but the clouds might be a little too bright, making them look unnatural. Here's some fireworks, and the Aaxa M5, the higher resolution, maintains better fine line details. And our final image, some stars in the night sky. The Aaxa M5, the sharp details and great shadow details. And let's zoom in on the sky here to compare the quality of the stars. Big difference. Next, we'll compare the DBPower T20 budget projector to a full-size name brand BenQ projector that's rated at 2000 lumen. You'll learn in some of my other reviews that the name brand 2000 lumen projectors are actually many times brighter than the so-called 2000 lumen budget projectors that sell on Amazon for under $150. Here's a quick brightness comparison between the sub-$100 DBPower T20 budget projector with a claimed rating of 1800 lumen and the name brand BenQ projector rated at 2000 lumen. From this picture, it's clear that the claims of cheap knockoffs are not always true. I think you'd agree the BenQ projector on the right is much more than 10% brighter than the budget projector on the left. The same holds true for the quality of your projector screen. Here's a quick comparison between a cheap $30 Spandex projector screen made in China on the right and an $80 Spandex projector screen made in the USA on the left. As you can see, it's worth spending a bit more for the higher quality image you'll get. With that being said, you will remember from the beginning of this video I showed you that I was projecting these images onto a white Spandex projector screen. However, if you want to use your projector in a room that's not totally dark, or if you want to use it outside, like in your backyard for an outdoor movie, or take it camping or to a party or something, there are two things you may want to consider: a brighter projector and the darker silver Spandex projector screen. Even though the silver screen looks quite a bit darker than the white screen, it'll actually give you a nice bright image with more contrast, which is especially useful when you can't get an environment that's completely dark, such as being outside with a full moon or if there's streetlights nearby. Now, the other benefit of the darker silver Spandex screen is that you won't have to wash it as often if you accidentally drop it on the ground, because you won't notice dirt as much on the darker fabric. But keep in mind, if the Spandex screen does get dirty, you can just throw it in the washer using cool water and then dry it for 10 to 15 minutes in the dryer and it's good as new. That's not as easy with some other types of projector screens. And finally, you'll remember when I showed you the rear projection ability of the white Spandex projector screen. Well, the silver screen has that same ability. Okay, let's continue with our BenQ comparison. Here you can see the size comparison between the DBPower T20 budget projector with a claimed brightness of 1800 lumen and a resolution of 800 by 480 and the full-size name brand BenQ W1070 projector with a brightness of 2000 lumen and a higher 1920 by 1080 resolution. Our first comparison here is a simple white image to compare the brightness. As you can see, the so-called 1800 lumen DBPower T20 budget projector is nowhere near as bright as the 2000 lumen name brand BenQ projector. And now let's zoom in to compare the pixels. And next we have some basic colored squares with the BenQ being much brighter. And you may want to pause on this image. This is the actual lumen measurement of each color. This was done in a completely dark room as opposed to a dimly lit room like all our other slides were shot in. And we'll zoom in to compare the color pixels. Next we'll compare some basic color gradients. You'll notice the BenQ, the transition between the colors is much smoother. And here we have some colored smoke on the white background. Zooming in, we can see much more detail from the higher resolution BenQ. And smoke on a black background. Zooming in on this one, you can see the drastic difference in details. Here's a basic color gradient. And zooming in, we'll compare the detail here. Here you can see the shadow details are much better from the BenQ projector, and the highlights are better as well. Here the shadow details once again are better from the BenQ, and zooming in you can see the drastic difference there. And here you see better shadows and highlights in this image from the BenQ. Here's a gradient, much better resolution from the BenQ projector, and zooming in you can see the big difference there. Here's another grid pattern. BenQ looks much better once again, and zooming in you can see the big difference. Here's some black grids on a white background. Zooming in we can see the grid pattern is much better from the BenQ. And white grid on a black background. Zooming in we'll see the same difference in quality here. Here the text is much more legible from the BenQ projector. Zooming in you can see the difference. And the skin tones are brighter and better from the BenQ. We can see the detail, the faces are sharper as well. Here's another comparison of faces for skin tone, and we'll zoom in on this one. And the colors are much brighter from the BenQ projector, and the details are better as well. Here's a similar image for comparison. Here you really see the brightness difference between the two projectors. And here again the brightness is much brighter from the BenQ. And once again the details are much better from the BenQ as well as we zoom in to see that. Here's a nice high contrast image. And zooming in you can see the difference in quality. Here you can see how much more contrast the BenQ has. And zooming in, it's sharper as well. Here we can see much better shadow details from the BenQ, and look at the pyramid, how much sharper it is. Here's a good sunset scene for comparison. And a night shot. Zooming in, notice the detail on the bridge. And notice the fence in the background, how much more detail you pick up from the BenQ projector. And when we zoom in on this image, you will see how much sharper the higher resolution BenQ is. Here's a nice night shot of a balloon. And some fireworks. The fine line details are much better from the BenQ. And our final image, compare the stars in the sky. Zooming in, you can see the big difference there. So my final advice is as follows. If you're always going to be using your projector in a totally dark room, then the brightness isn't as important as the resolution. It'd be better to get a dimmer projector with a higher resolution. So if your viewing environment isn't totally dark, such as a room with windows and you don't have blackout curtains during the day, or you're outside where there may be street lights or a glowing moon, then you'll want to go with a brighter projector. But remember that cheap projectors are almost never as bright as they claim to be. And as far as resolution goes, I would typically pick a less bright projector with a higher resolution over a brighter projector with a lower resolution. You can always try to make your room darker, but you'll never be able to increase the resolution of your projector. I personally would never get a projector with a resolution below 720p, which is a resolution of 1280 pixels across by 720 pixels high. The reason for this is that you'll most likely be enlarging the video to about 9 feet across, and at that size you can actually see the individual pixels on lower resolution projectors. I think a 1080p projector is about the highest resolution you'd need, as a 4K projector doesn't really add all that much to the picture quality for the much higher price you'd be paying. Here's a screenshot from a YouTube video that compares a 4K projector versus a 180p projector. It's being projected onto a wall, but even so, there's really not much difference between the quality. As far as sound goes, I would recommend an external speaker of some sort, as most projectors that I've come across under $500 do not have great sound quality. But I will say I was fairly impressed with the sound I got from the soda can-sized nebula capsule. You'll also want to consider if you'd like a portable projector that can run on batteries as opposed to a projector that has to be plugged into the wall. The portability of the smaller projectors is always nice, but keep in mind that the battery life is almost always under 2 hours, but it is not limited to running on the battery only. You can always plug it in for unlimited runtime. As far as portable projectors go, I really like the Aaxa brand. The P300, P700, and M5 projectors have a fairly high resolution, nice colors, and good brightness. The nebula capsule also produces a decent image with a really good speaker, but it does have a lower resolution than the 3 Aaxa projectors. Alright everybody, thanks for your time. I hope you found this video informative, and if you think others would find it helpful, please click the thumbs up button, which makes it easier for them to find it. And also don't forget to click on the links for the Spandex projector screens below in the description, and check back for more projector comparison videos coming up soon. Thanks for watching.